Hello there guys and welcome back to the channel. Today we are going to be carrying on with our explanation and guide series for Act 6 Chapter 3, and we have reached quest number 4, the Winter Mornings, the one with Iron Man Infinity War as the final boss. And this quest, in my opinion, was a quite big step up in difficulty. I know I definitely struggled in places and occasionally on the final boss as well, because I was rushing through it, and that was like one of the last harder paths that I had left to do. And oh boy, if you're not prepared, you're gonna have a miserable time overall. So this quest, just like all the other quests in chapter 3, has 6 paths, and we're gonna start off with the one on the top left corner, and that's Aspect of Evolution, Bubble Shield, Brute Force, Improved Power Gain, and so on and so forth. And there's also Supercharge, which gives them a power gain buff. So basically there's a lot of power control required. However, unfortunately, it's not the only thing that you're needing in order to clear this path, because not just the entire lane is filled with difficult node combination, as we can see here. There are some extremely specific and dangerous encounters as well, which will make it problematic to push through, as I found out firsthand. So as we can see, first off, we have this Hyperion that has insane amount of power gains all across the board, in kind of in between Aspect of Evolution, increased power gains, Supercharge, and yeah, it's just quite crazy to see how quickly he can get his level 3. So you definitely need a counter for this Hyperion. I myself use Dr. Doom. I assume Magic with Mystic Dispersion would do perfect as well, but you do need some really strong power mitigation. Additionally, they have this all or nothing improved power gain Havoc with Supercharge on as well. So this guy is also a fairly tricky cookie to deal with, basically, because yeah, that plasma detonation damage can be insane, and all or nothing obviously means as soon as he reaches level 3, which will be fast, your lights are out. So you do need specific counters, and this fight, actually, the perfect counter for this guy is OG Vision, which I'm gonna discuss later on a bit as well, in conjunction with a special boost that we have available for this lane. But yeah, so just be aware that there is in fact also all or nothing Havoc, and additionally there is a big stun immune magic with improved power gain, Supercharge, and all the good stuff, so that limbo damage is a real thing as well. Combine it with the Brute Force and Bubble Shield, and you're in some really deep waters here. This quest takes no victims. They're just gonna eat you alive there. But we do have a special boost available for us, and that special boost is for tech champions. It basically goes as follows: every time you burn or drain defender's power, you gain their armor buff. And if you drain or burn their power while they are under a power gain buff, they also take a passive damage burst of 70% of your attack, basically, and it kind of stacks up based on how many armor buffs you do have. So this seemingly works pretty much perfect with OG Vision, because you're going to be burning the power a lot. Additionally, because of Supercharge node, they will be spending majority of the time with a power gain buff on, because that node goes as follows: that they gain a power gain buff that lasts for 10 seconds every 15 seconds. So every 15 seconds they will be spending 10 of those 15 seconds with the power gain buff on, so you have a really good chance to access this extra damage. But that will do for this path. It's definitely one of the trickier paths, a really hard one in my opinion, and definitely requires you to be extremely well prepared, and not just for the path, but obviously for the boss as well. So let's move on to the path number 2. And path number 2 is relatively much more simple to deal with. It is basically explosive personality and a whole chunk of resistances, as well as heal reversal. there are multiple ways how to cheese Explosive Personality, because you can tap opponent's block up to 4 times. They're going to gain these 4 armor buffs, and then you can utilize either your Mystic champions to deal extra damage, or Ronin to permanently stunlock these guys, so on and so forth. So this is not in fact the hardest path to do. The encounters on this path aren't too tricky either, and you definitely have some reasonable amount of options within a healthy roster that is kind of capable of doing Act 6. You will find some answers to this path, and even if you don't, the fights are just going to be longer. They're not going to be impossible to get through. Now, heal reversal, there is passive, however, and it is active the entire fight. So typically you probably want to get rid of stuff like willpower and so on and so forth. However, additionally, we do have a special boost available for this path. And this boost, well, let's face it, it's a nice to have kind of boost, because you can clear this without it, but it still will help you quite a bit. And it states as follows: when the defender is struck by special 1 or 2, they passively heal to 100% of the damage mitigated by armor or resistances. Now, because of Explosive Personality, all the other resistances, they're going to be mitigating a lot of damage. And because of heal reversal node, whatever this boost would make them heal up, they will be taking as a damage instead. Therefore, it does kind of complement really well whichever champion you are going to be using. Now, it's worth noting that this champion only affects mutant champions, but it will let you do a lot more damage throughout this entire lane on every single encounter. So it's definitely one of those boosts that you kind of want to remember, because otherwise it's going to be a really long path with all that damage mitigation. But now we can move on to path number 3, and path number 3 is not all that horrible either. It's counter tactics and flail mainly, and there are some other nodes depending on which encounter you are facing. But basically what it means that opponents are going to get a lot more attack as the fight carries on. So as always, you want to make sure to use champions that can find openings without needing to rely on parry and stuff like that. So Ghost, for instance, can be perfect. And Flail is an interesting node, fairly annoying depending who you are using. So basically anyone's special attacks causes random damage over time effects on both champions. Now, so what does that mean? That means that you never really know what's going to happen when you throw a special attack, which debuff you're going to get. Now, if you have Ghost, obviously, good times for you, because every time you're going to throw a special attack, it's going to be pretty much immediately converted into a passive fury buff, and you're just going to be getting a huge damage increase without having to worry too much about anything else. Other than Ghost or possibly Aegon and a couple more options, you kind of want to cover yourself with champions that have as many different immunities as possible. But if you do not have Ghost, it's still a fairly risky play, because you never know which one is going to land. And there is a boost to help you out. This boost affects all the skill champions. And basically what it does is that every 10 hits on your combo meter, you become debuff immune for 8 seconds. Now, it does sound amazing, and it does sound extremely useful, and it is. However, keep in mind that lane also has counter tactics. This boost basically will kind of force you to be super aggressive, or at least have a very good timing on when the special attacks are thrown and where your combo meter is at. Now, because of this, of the counter tactics, if you do make a mistake trying to be aggressive, you're going to be punished for it so much harder, because opponent's attacks are going to be insane. So this boost will help you. It's definitely useful, but kind of like keep in mind that the counter tactics is there, and if you slip up, it's going to be really costly. So at the same time, you do have to be careful and pace yourself. Initially, it seems that you will want to kind of like be as aggressive as you can to make sure you reach that 10 hit mark as quick as possible, but sometimes it might be better to slow down while using it. But anyways, that will do for this one, and we're going to move on to path number 4. And path number 4 overall is one of the easier paths to tackle. There isn't anything kind of like specific or too demanding. Now, you do need to take in consideration that there is abomination, so you will need somebody that's poison immune. There are going to be a couple of annoying encounters like stun immune Rhino, and I think fully immune Spider-Man. But other than that, it's just that pretty much. There is nothing too crazy on this path. There are no crazy kind of nodes stretching in the length of the entire path. Each encounter is a bit different, but overall there's nothing and overly complicated and too difficult. So this is in fact one of the easier routes to take for completion, just because it doesn't really demand much, and you can use vast majority of your roster and kind of focus more on the boss encounter than the path itself leading to the boss. And yeah, that's pretty much it. No special boost obviously either. So now we're moving on to path number 5, which is again in a similar fashion. There is no one set specific node, I believe. Throughout this quest there are different encounters. There's like this Moon Knight on Spite, so you need to be aware of that. There is also 200% power gain Gambit, which 200% power gain pretty much makes the fights almost unplayable without a power control champion or something of the sort. Then there is a stun immune Kingpin, and there is a Morning Star on this path. But other than that, once again, there are no specific boosts, no special nodes, just huge stacked opponents that arguably are not the most difficult. So this is a perfect path to start off as well. And as for the last path is arguably one of the more trickier paths available in this quest, and perhaps in even all chapter, because the favorite path, the favorite global node from 625 makes its return, and it is present in the entire duration of this path. In addition to that, we have their Korg, we have Wasp, we have Mr. Sinister, so we have a lot of tricky opponents on this path by themselves. And when you put them on with the global node Do Not Go Gentle plus 15% buffet, it makes for a fun time. However, buffet might be your salvation or your doom, depending how you look at it. If you are able to deal damage because of it with like Void, Captain America Infinity War, or some other heal reversal champions, you might be saved there. Other than that, for instance, this Drax has 200% power gain, buffet, Do Not Go Gentle. It's a nightmare of a fight to deal with. The next is Heimdall, which is stun immune, and overall, yeah, it is a very tricky path in itself, unless you are in fact cheesing it with some sort of heal reversal and using that as your primarily like damage source, because 15% buffet provides them with huge healing. So if you are able to nullify that, great. If you're able to use that against the opponents, even better for you, because it's going to be massive chunks of health. So yeah, Void, Captain America Infinity War with tech champions on the team, so on and so forth. Amazing solutions for this path. Additionally, Quake did put in a lot of work for me, as she always does. She could completely ignore the buffet. But this is a very tricky path, very tricky node. The Do Not Go Gentle is extremely annoying node to deal with, which is pretty much one of the main reasons why 625 was one of the more difficult quests ever created, because you either need constantly keep heavying or you need constantly keep intercept, and intercepting is always risky, and relying just on your heavies is not the easiest thing to do, especially when you're facing like stun immune opponents with buffet, so on and so forth. So yeah, it's not an easy path. It's definitely difficult. It's the one you want to leave towards the end, unless you have a perfect strategy in mind how to use that buffet, because this is the big buffet, 15%, that heals them up for a huge chunk. So let's check out a few opponents that we have on this path. Aside from this Drax and Heimdall, we also have Korg here with Force of Will, so immune to ability accuracy reduction. Awesome, plus bigger energy resistance, because that's the primary way of countering him. Then we have Wasp with aggression regeneration, even more regeneration on a champion. Next one off is Mr. Sinister with genetic perfection, so he starts with 3 random buffs, and plus he has basically that degeneration synergy with Havoc active as well. But that's it. Once again, this path will be extremely difficult unless you somehow find a way to cheese the buffet and healing in itself. But that's the last path in this quest, and now we can focus on the boss itself. Now, the boss is Iron Man Infinity War with Plague Mine, Armor Break Immunity, Enhanced Armor Ups. He also cannot be heal reversed, he can only be heal blocked, and Arc Overlord plus improved power gain, which makes the last 15% an absolute nightmare. Now, as always, the best solutions are the ones that typically kind of involve true strike, true accuracy to bypass that last annoying auto block phase of his, because the power gain he's going to be getting in that last phase is going to be insane. So additionally, Void is probably one of the best options. However, he has a massive health pool, he has a massive attack, so you do need to be really careful throughout the fight. And the worst thing you can do is get KO'd when he's at 15% health, because then when you go in the fight, until you get him under control, he's going to be constantly spamming special attacks, and this is one of those fights that can definitely get you tilted. When I was rushing through this, for most part I got through him fine, and then there was like the one last path where he definitely took my number multiple times. So he's not the worst boss ever in the world to face, but he's definitely not an easy one either. You do need to have a solid game plan in mind when it's gonna come to dealing with this guy. In my experience, yeah, Void is amazing, Aegon can do fantastic, Corvus can do immensely well. Who else we have? Captain America Infinity War with tech champions on team with those petrifies can reduce the healing from Arc Overload and the power gain. That also works fantastic. But overall, yeah, it's kind of like up to you who you want to use. Remember how to fight Iron Man Infinity War, how to counter his heavy attack with your own. Reparrying will be a useful skill to have. And other than that, it's an Iron Man Infinity War. It's a really stacked Iron Man Infinity War, so approach with caution, I suppose. But yeah, it's not unpassable boss if you are prepared, and there are plenty of kind of like popular solutions available to this guy. And that will pretty much do for today's guide for 634. So we have only 635 and 636 left, which should be up on the channel in the next couple of days. And yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you did, hit that like button, hit that sub button. If you think your alliance mates, friends, or whoever might benefit from it, definitely feel free to share it with your friends. I will be grateful. But I will take my leave now, and catch you guys next time. See ya.